Poi me hearties, the Aussie vineyard and its sunken treasure chest of sparkling wine salad at the bottom of the ocean. Yep, there's a reason. We'll explain.
RNZ News at 5. Ahi Marie ko Evie Ashton tēnei. A $14.5 million package of sweeteners to help boost health workforce numbers has been unveiled. In an unusual twist, a youth-focused recruitment campaign will be integrated into the storyline of Shortland Street, a first in its 30-year history. Health Minister Andrew Little says there are 3,300 vacancies and the package will help fill the gaps. Overseas nurses and doctors will get financial help to be able to work in New Zealand. There'll also be a stepped-up international recruitment campaign and dedicated immigration support, but no change to immigration settings. Inland Revenue says nearly 1,000 people have asked to opt out of the government's $350 cost of living payment. The first instalment of $116.67 goes out today to accounts listed with IRD, but some recipients are overseas and shouldn't be eligible. IRD won't say how many overseas are wrongly being paid, but 970 people have so far opted out. Rhonda, who has a disability, is ineligible for the money because she gets the winter energy payment. But she says seeing the money go to people offshore rubs salt into the wound.
Just feels really quite unfair. It's just another blow. It's not a huge amount of money, but it's just we're giving this to other people, even people overseas that are earning way too much.
People can opt out online or on the phone. The father of a woman who died in a suspected suicide while she was a patient in Palmerston North Hospital's mental health ward wants to know why her pleas for help were ignored. 21-year-old Erica Hume died in May 2014. At an inquest into her death today, Owen Hume said he and his family hope coroner Matthew Bates can uncover what happened to Erica and make recommendations for change.
When Erica entered Ward 21 on the 6th, Erica did not want to die. She wanted to live, and she asked for help. The purpose of this inquest is to answer why she did not get that help and ultimately paid the price with her life.
Owen Hume says his daughter was failed by mental health care providers from the time she sought help as a schoolgirl. A whangarei company has been fined for neglecting a trailer that came off its truck and hit a car behind, killing a 9-year-old girl. WorkSafe, which brought health and safety charges, says the failure by Johnston's Direct Logistics to do basic maintenance is a warning to all businesses. Phil Pennington reports.
The trailer came loose and its safety chain failed south of Whangarei in October 2020. WorkSafe says experts found the tow ball coupling was so worn that a small bump or change of slope could dislodge it. The trailer also had an expired certificate of fitness and uneven tyre pressure. WorkSafe says the company did not do regular and effective inspections of its vehicles. The Whangarei District Court fined it $50,000 and ordered it to pay $145,000 in reparation.
A former Labour Party official says he alerted media to the fact the party had received money from two of the people facing charges in relation to National Party donations in order to be transparent. It's the second week of the High Court trial in which 7 people have pleaded not guilty to charges relating to electoral fraud, including 3 who are linked to donations to both parties. The accuracy of a press release sent to some media by text in 2020 was questioned. Andre Anderson, who was Labour Party secretary at the time, sent the release.
Labour wanted to be transparent with the New Zealand public about whether we'd also received donations from the same donors.
This is potentially a political scandal as far as Labour's concerned?
No, I'm not sure why you would suggest that.
And the Prime Minister has arrived in Apia to commemorate 60 years since the signing of the Treaty of Friendship between New Zealand and Samoa. Her Air Force flight was the first international flight to arrive in Samoa since it reopened its border to tourists earlier today. To sport, and track cycling will again be the focus as the New Zealand team chase more medals at the Commonwealth Games tonight. New Zealand currently sit third on the medal table with 19. Felicity Reid reports from Birmingham.
New Zealand cyclists have already won 9 medals at the velodrome, including 6 gold, and they should add to that on day 4. Scratch race winner Corbin Strong lines up with Campbell Stewart and Aaron Gate in the points race. Both Strong and Stewart are former world champions. Elise Andrews, who already has 3 medals in Birmingham, including 2 gold, lines up in the Kieran, the event she won silver in at last year's Olympics. New Zealanders are also involved in swimming, judo, boxing, bowls, basketball, gymnastics, squash, weightlifting and hockey. Australia tops the medals table with 22 gold medals, England has 11 and New Zealand 10.
England cyclist Matt Walls has been released from hospital after being involved in a crash when his bike flew into the velodrome crowd. It happened on the final lap of the men's scratch race qualifier as 8 riders, including New Zealand's George Jackson, crashed, leaving bikes strewn across the track. Jackson still qualified for the final, going on to help teammate Corbin Strong to win gold. And New Zealand have scored their first victory in the Sail GP series, winning the Great Britain round to move up to 3rd in the overall standings. That's the news.
Gold.
Surprising, to be honest. I didn't think that would happen tonight. I knew this morning after the heat that I had a little bit left to give in that last 50.
Silver.
But if it's a silver, it's a silver. I'm proud of that. To know that I'm up there at the pointy end and being so consistent this year is the real dream come true.
And bronze.
On the sevens, no gold there. Men's and women's both losing out.
Yeah, 2 bronze medals. That won't have been at all where either of those programs would have thought they'd have been at the Commonwealth Games.
Always on the podium. Morning Report, weekdays from 6 on RNZ National.
You're with Lisa Owen next on Checkpoint. Right now, the short forecast from Met Service to midnight Tuesday. For Northland, Auckland and Waikato, mainly fine, but there are isolated showers, especially in the west. Coromandel, Bay of Plenty, Gisborne, Hawke's Bay and Waidudapa, fine, but high clouds increasing tomorrow. Northwest gales in Waidudapa tomorrow. From Waitomo to Wellington, including the Central High Country, fine today. A few showers are developing tomorrow. Northwest gales in Wellington tomorrow. Fine today for Nelson, Marlborough and Canterbury. High clouds increasing tomorrow and scattered rains developing about the Western Ranges and Canterbury Plains. Northwest gales tomorrow. For Bulla and Westland, showers turning to heavy rain in Westland tomorrow morning and in Bulla in the evening. For Otago and Southland, fine with increasing high cloud today. Scattered rain tomorrow, possibly thundery in the west from the afternoon. Northwest gales tomorrow. For Fiordland, periods of rain with heavy falls and thunderstorms from tonight. Northwest gales tomorrow and a few showers are forecast for Te Kohu, the Chatham Islands. It's 7 minutes past 5. I'll have the latest news headlines and traffic news for you at about 20 past 5.
Nā mihi iwi, tēnā koutou katoa, no mai haere mai ki Checkpoint I tēnei rā, ko Lisa Owen tēnei. The government's unveiled a multi-pronged plan to recruit thousands of health workers, including international doctors and nurses, into Aotearoa's struggling hospitals, GP clinics, aged care and beyond. It includes giving overseas nurses up to $10,000 towards their New Zealand training and registration costs, covering fees for lapsed local nurses to re-register and return to the job, paying international doctors' salaries for about 4.5 months during their induction and training internships. There'll also be a one-stop international recruitment service within Te Whatu Ora, including dedicated immigration support services to make it easier for overseas health workers to move here, pre-approving up to 1,900 international recruits and bumping up training numbers for local doctors, nurses and radiographers. Ko taku manuhiri in INA, ko Andrew Little, the Health Minister, who joins us now live. Kia ora, Minister.
Kia ora, Lisa.
How many more frontline health staff do you reckon you're going to bring in with this package?
Well, we need as many as we can get. We've got, currently just nurse vacancies alone, about 3,300 in the public health system. We know we have vacancies in primary care and aged residential care, anywhere between 1,000 and 2,000 registered nurses there. So this is just an opportunity to, with the scale we've now got with Te Whatu Ora Health New Zealand, get some real heft behind our recruitment campaign. We know we've got about 7,000 overseas qualified health workers registered, expressing an interest in wanting to work in New Zealand. So we've now got the opportunity to go through that and get people on board as quickly as we can.
So the new health agency is greenlit to bring in 1,900 international workers, right? That vacancy list that you read out far and away exceeds that by thousands of workers. Have you got the number right?
No, and that number will go. That's what's been approved over the last sort of month. It increases every week. This is the process that immigration has in place for accredited employers. They have to approve kind of the number of vacancies being recruited into. So Health NZ has to demonstrate to Immigration New Zealand where the vacancies are, what they've done to try to recruit, all that sort of stuff. So immigration approves, says, yep, this is what you're authorised to recruit to. But that is changing every week. So I've got no doubt that as the recruitment process gets underway, we will be focused on filling the vacancies that we've got. Look, we also want to recruit domestically as well. I mean, part of the program I've announced today is for New Zealand qualified nurses or former nurses who've been out of nursing for a while but who are showing an interest in wanting to go back, many of them on a part-time basis. There's now a pathway to get back to get some part-time nursing work.
Okay, and I want to talk about the local nurses in a second, but if we can stay with international, this dedicated one-stop shop, if you like, with immigration support, are you, hiring additional immigration staff? Are they going to be diverted from other duties? How will it work?
No, as I understand it, Te Whatu Ora, they're putting it all together at the moment, but they may well have staff seconded from immigration to help out, and it'll be staff from within their organisation who are then focused, out of their workforce people or recruitment people who are then focused on dealing with the overseas recruitment campaigns that are needed.
So if you're seconding, does that mean other businesses trying to get workers are going to have to wait longer because there's not as many immigration staff working on their visas?
Well, I can't speak for immigration, but I understand they are staffing up anyway. But this is work. Some of this will be work that immigration would otherwise be doing anyway. So we're trying to streamline it as much as possible, take care of the not only sort of recruiting and getting people expressing their interest in applying for jobs, but then sorting out the immigration issues they've got, sorting out their settlement into New Zealand once they get here, all those sorts of things. So
how much will it speed up? How much will it speed things up, Minister? I'm just wanting to get an idea of your expectations from the point that they say, yep, that is the person we want from overseas. What are your expectations in terms of the time it should take to get them on the shop floor?
Well, ideally a matter of weeks. I mean, the stories I hear at the moment is folks who get here from overseas and they do all their competency assessment program, and then it can be 4 to 6 months before they get their registration. So it's sorting out all those things. I mean, part of the equation for all of this too is Te Whatu Ora and the immigration and the nursing council, for example, for nurses, actually sorting out what is duplicated work and what isn't, so that we can streamline the processes there. Because what it looks like is, between the three of them, at least as I say, when it comes to nurses, there's a lot of duplication going on. So there'll be a bit of help to sort that out as well. So it is about reducing it down to a matter of weeks, not months. Yeah,
Minister, would be a huge shift if that were to happen. Are you confident it can? And within what time frame?
Well, it needs to, and so I know that the Nursing Council is very keen to be wanting to do its bit. I know immigration is very keen to be wanting to do its bit. So it's just about joining everybody up and saying, okay, if you're doing these sorts of checks and you're a trusted organisation, you must be because you're the accredited employer, then we probably don't need to be doing these things. We'll focus on the stuff that we do that nobody else is doing to ensure that the person working here is competent, safe and culturally appropriate to do so.
So, Minister, if you want them from Wotago to be here within a couple of weeks and on the shop floor, have these agencies told you that this is achievable? Do they know your expectations are that high?
Oh, I didn't say a couple of weeks. I said a matter of weeks.
Matter of weeks.
Yes,
so how many weeks then, Minister, if you can be more specific?
Well, way less than 4 to 6 months, that's for sure. So,
right.
In the discussions I've been having with officials, that's what I've been laying out, and they're all saying, yeah, we all want to be doing the right thing, so I'm just going to give them the impetus to do that.
Okay, because the thing is this happening fast enough? In terms of local talent, you're going to increase radiology registrars from 100 to 115, right? That's not happening for a few years, though. You're not getting up to that target for 3 years, I think, from what you said at the press conference. And nurse practitioners training numbers are going to go from 50 into 100. You're doubling it, but that's not until 2024. Why is it taking so long to scale up?
Yeah. So the radiology it's 5 a year until we get to the 115. So, and then
can't we do better than that, Minister?
Well, there's a question about training places and all that sort of stuff. So that's what the system says they can accommodate.
In 2024 for nurse practitioners.
So we're doing 50 a year at the moment. We've got about 600 nurse practitioners in the country at the moment, and we want to increase that a lot because that's where the future lies for a lot of integrated health services. So that's as quickly as people can move. I think, there's a combination of short-term things and long-term things. The long-term things are just as important. These are, those measures are addressing the long-term stuff.
Appreciate your time, Minister. That is Health Minister Andrew Little. It is almost 5:15. Kia mau tonu mai. Stay with us. You're listening to Checkpoint on RNZ National. Nearly 1,000 people have opted out of the government's $350 cost of living payments. The first instalments have been landing in bank accounts today, with IRD paying out $152 million today. But there's been a sour tinge to the government's $800 million sweetener. Some recipients are overseas and shouldn't be eligible. The misdirected money is frustrating for those missing out in Aotearoa. Sam Ollie reports.
I'll transfer you now.
IRD's upbeat holding music on its 0800 number for people with cost of living payment qualms, including those wanting to opt out. This morning, the department said 56 people had opted out. Now that number's grown to 970. The top-ups announced in Budget 2022 go out over the next 3 months to New Zealand tax residents aged 18 and over who earned up to $70,000 in the last financial year. But the government's using an automated system that can't easily tell who lives overseas and who doesn't. London-based IT worker Laura is among those getting a surprise payment. She immigrated from Wellington 8 years ago.
So I got an email on Saturday, the Saturday just passed, and it basically said your cost of living payment will be in your account in 2 days' time, which was quite a surprise to me because I didn't know anything about the scheme.
The IRD won't say how many people it's unintentionally paid overseas. National's Nichols says it is not just expat New Zealanders, but also former migrants affected. She says Nationals heard from a man who left Aotearoa in 2014, French former visa holders, and a man who left in 2019 but is now in the Philippines.
My sense is this is very widespread. It's a major muck-up. It's like the government pressed send all. It's certainly not targeted.
The Prime Minister told RNZ the vast majority of those getting the money were in New Zealand.
But we have also moved quickly, and so there will be some who are captured by the system who aren't part of the criteria that have been designed but who may well receive it. We're not asking for IRD to go out actively and find those individuals. The cost of doing so would outweigh any benefit of doing so.
University of Canterbury Business School Professor Adrian Sawyer thought the government would have been better prepared to check if people lived offshore.
The surprise I had is I thought with their new computer system that there would be mechanisms that would be reasonably straightforward to be able to verify.
Rhonda lost her job during the pandemic and says her life savings have halved. She has a disability and gets the winter energy payment, so misses out on the cost of living distributions. She says the payments given to overseas earners rub salt into the wound.
Just feels really quite unfair. It's just another blow. It's just like, it's not a huge amount of money, but it's just, we're giving this to other people, even people overseas that are earning way too much, but we're not giving you anything.
Northlanders shared similar sentiments with RNZ today.
Oh, I think it should only be just New Zealand.
I heard the comment earlier today that it's going to cost too much to get it back. Well, it's not their money and they just give it away left, right and centre. So I'm pretty disgusted about it.
Difficult for the government to manage, so I don't see an easy way out of that.
As did some people in Nelson.
Well, that's a joke.
I think it's an oversight, but I'm thrilled that it's come in for people here that are doing it tough.
Man, that's pretty generous.
So should those overseas pay the money back?
Maybe they should. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Or just not get it at all.
I think it'll be really difficult to get it back.
It would be nice if they did, but human nature, I don't expect it. And I'm not 100% certain if I was living overseas and someone suddenly handed me some payments, I might think, oh, wow, yeah.
Oh, I definitely think they should, yes. That would be great of them, but I can't see it happening.
The IRD says it will only try to recover payments if someone's provided fraudulent or willfully misleading information.
It is 19 minutes past 5. You're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. Mai all for Cardle. We would love your feedback on anything you've heard on the program this evening. Is anyone out there going to reject the government's cost of living payment? Are you giving it back? What do you think about overseas residents getting it? Also, the government's announced a plan to recruit more health workers, a number of them coming from overseas. Have they got the balance right from training locally and bringing in overseas doctors and nurses? Text us on 2101. You can tweet us at checkpointrnz, or you can send us an email. checkpoints@rnz.co.nz is the address. Time to get to the headlines now. Ko iwi anō tēnei.
Kia ora, Lisa. A $14.5 million package to help boost health workforce numbers has been unveiled. Overseas nurses and doctors will get financial help to be able to work in New Zealand. There'll also be a stepped-up international recruitment campaign and dedicated immigration support, but no change to immigration settings. A woman who lives with a disability and is ineligible for the government's cost of living payment because she gets the winter energy payment says seeing the money go to people offshore rubs salt into the wound. The first instalment of $116.67 goes out today, but some recipients are overseas and shouldn't be eligible. A former Labour Party official says he alerted media to the fact the party had received money from two of the people facing charges in relation to National Party donations. It's the second week of the High Court trial in which 7 people have pleaded not guilty to charges relating to electoral fraud. The Prime Minister has arrived in Apia to commemorate 60 years since the signing of the Treaty of Friendship between New Zealand and Samoa. And representatives for both the United States and China have been talking up their desire for peace in the Pacific today. A top US commander has been in a series of meetings with the head of our Defence Force in Wellington. And speaking at a business summit in Auckland, China's ambassador to New Zealand said Beijing doesn't want to see tensions in the Asia Pacific. Those are the headlines. Looking at traffic, nothing to report on the main routes in the main centres, but State Highway 94 Milford Road is now closed overnight between Hollyford Road Junction and the Tutsuko Bridge. They'll update that tomorrow after an avalanche assessment. I'll have the latest news headlines and traffic for you at about 5:40.
Kia ora rā e ho. New Zealand had a golden morning at the Commonwealth Games as new sports stars emerged in the pool and on the cycle track. And these rising stars aren't done yet. Felicity Reid reports on our swimming stars making waves in Birmingham.
Lewis Clarebert's second gold medal of the Commonwealth Games came in an event the 23-year-old Wellingtonian shouldn't have even been swimming in. 4 years ago, Clarebert was 7th in the 200-metre butterfly. But today, his trademark late surge took him past 2018 champion South Africa's Chad le Clos to touch first and return to the top of the podium 24 hours after he was there for the first time.
I wasn't even entered in it. I just asked to be put in it and they said yes, and I'm glad they said yes.
Minutes after Clarebert's success, Auckland teenager Josh Wilmer was also winning gold in the 100-metre breaststroke SB8. Wilmer waited until the last possible moment to sneak ahead of Australian Timothy Hodge and win by 0.7 of a second.
So I made that last 25, I knew I had to pump the arms, kick the legs. I haven't seen him the last 5 metres, so I was real hoping I had him.
Tupou Naoafi was also in the medals, taking silver in the SB8 100 metres backstroke.
The last 25, I literally didn't think I was going to get it because I was just dying out. I saw arms going, so I was really nervous, but to touch the ball and see my time, second place, but I was just more happy with my time because I haven't gone that fast this whole year.
Also at the Sandoval Aquatic Centre today, Australian Emma McEwen became the most successful Commonwealth Games athlete of all time, claiming her 11th gold medal with victory in the 50-metre freestyle. Clarebert's rival le Clos became one of the most decorated Games athletes, with his silver his 18th medal. New Zealand's success, Clarebert says, is all the more impressive given the resources available to the Kiwi swimmers.
I think Australia gets something like $33 million for their swimming program, and we're not quite scratching $1 million. So I think we're punching well above our weight, and what we're able to achieve, out of such a small pool is, I think, pretty incredible.
New Zealand's newest swimming star now turns supporter before he returns to the pool on the final day of the swimming competition for the 200-metre individual medley. At the velodrome, Corbin Strong's win in the 15-kilometre scratch race gave New Zealand a record-equal 6th cycling gold at the Games, and that haul could be added to overnight when Strong lines up with Campbell Stewart and Aaron Gate in the points race. Elise Andrews, who already has 3 medals in Birmingham, including 2 gold, lines up in the Kieran, the event she won silver in at last year's Olympics. New Zealanders are also involved in swimming, judo, boxing, bowls, basketball, gymnastics, squash, weightlifting and hockey. New Zealand sits 3rd on the medal table, behind England and Australia.
A Penrose store owner says it's hard to see a future for his business after it was targeted by criminals for the 5th time since he took over barely a year ago. Local residents say there's huge concern over break-ins being committed in the area, with one woman telling Checkpoint she moved to New Zealand to escape crime-related crime in her homeland. Meanwhile, a local builder says he's alone and he alone is getting multiple call-outs to crime-related jobs in Auckland every week. Here's our reporter Nick Trubridge and cameraman Nick Monroe.
A young business owner ready to pack it in and shut up shop for good. First, the COVID-19 lockdown. Now a wave of criminals targeting his humble superette and post shop. Not once, not twice, not 3, even 4 times. But for the 5th time.
I really want to get out from this, but I signed the lease. I don't know is there any help from government or anything like that? If you can break the lease like this, I don't know, it's very hard at the moment.
The owner of Penrose Superette isn't keen to face our camera, but still wants to speak out. This is what it's like trying to make a living when you're a constant target. The dread of waking to a phone call in the middle of the night, followed by dismay as he arrives to smash doors and stolen stock. On top of 3 break-ins at the superette, the post shop he runs next door has been targeted twice in a horror post-COVID run since he took over last August.
Look, I'm going to lose my whole day trading today, right, because of this thing. I'm not going to earn, I'm going to pay the rent, but I'm not going to earn anything. And these kind of things, I still need to pay $1,000 for access, for the building, $1,000 for that normal business insurance, $2,000 just straight up on the table. Where I'm gonna get that? From where I'm gonna get that money? How I'm gonna pay this?
As we stand and talk, locals approach the door, stop to see it taped off and beaten in, shake their heads and express their disgust. Local tradesman Anthony Christini's showed up to grab some mail. Mr Christini's just one builder in Auckland, but he alone is getting multiple calls a week to businesses just like Penrose Superette.
Broken windows, kicked in doors, locks, back door locks, just going in for anything they can get. And they got no fear, they don't care. Cameras, lights, whatever, they go.
The call-outs come at any time on any given day as brazen daylight robberies seemingly become more common.
I've got a client that owns a car rental company and they cut a hole in the fence and they took out 14 Cadillac converters out of 14 rental cars. I mean, that's like a $30,000 bill for replace the cat converters, and they probably got $300 per cat at the scrap metal yard. So how do you factor 30k into your business on a Monday morning?
Penrose Superette's owner says he's barely making enough to cover the cost of running a business as is. The 5 break-ins have cost him tens of thousands of dollars. Lack of insurance stinging him the first time, insurance premiums now on the rise.
The COVID hit very hard before, and it's an industrial area. It's still lots of places closed and all. It's very hard at the moment to pay the bills and pay the rent, huge rents and all those things. So working but not earning anything.
Meanwhile, Mr Christini says the uptick in crime call-outs are, well, we'll let him explain.
It's through the roof. You're going in probably doing about, the claim on the last one probably be about $7,000, and all he got was an old phone. So you're looking at a $50 phone versus 7k damages.
Another local, Charmaine Ninaba, has also stopped by to pick up the Monday morning mail.
It's concerning for us. It's deteriorating and it's not good.
She lives and works not far from here and appears dismayed that her local postie, the local dairy, has been targeted yet again.
I come from a country, South Africa. I'm here for that reason. Because we had the same type of thing and we don't want that. things shouldn't go worse. It should go better here.
She says security's become a huge concern for the area, saying it's unbelievable her neighbour's been hit for a 5th time.
It's a beautiful country. We shouldn't live like this. Be scared to go in the street or be scared to walk in here and you don't know who's following you behind you or what's happening. It's not good. It's not good for the owners of these places.
Another small business owner looking for a better life, battling back from COVID, only to be beaten down by crime.
And if you were listening to that story from the Nichols on radio, we'll put the video up on our webpage. Do check it out. It is 5:30. Kia mau tonu mai. Stay with us. You're listening to Checkpoint on RNZ National. It's time for the business news now. Ko taku hua I Nai called Giles Beckford, who joins us live from Wellington. Giles, carpet burns. This is the business news, isn't it? We haven't strayed into some other territory. OK, hit me with it. What are we talking about?
Guarantee, Lisa, I sometimes think, a bit of corporate biff always grabs the headlines. This is one I give you in the left-hand corner. Godfreyhurst, part of the biggest carpet-making company in the world, a producer of wool and nylon carpets. In the right-hand corner, I give you Bremworth, New Zealand-based, makes only wool carpets. Now, in an effort to push up the credentials of wool carpets, Bremworth had been advertising that they're wonderful for the planet, they're good for people, they breathe, they're ecologically sound, it's local fibre, it's natural. And you put those nylon carpets, for instance, on your floor, it's like coating your floor in thousands of single-use plastic bags. Godfreyhurst says, not a show of that, not having any of that. That's greenwashing. And they started legal action. Well, this morning, Godfreyhurst said, look, a gesture of goodwill, and because we know Bremworth, and this is their term, is financially constrained, we've decided to not pursue the money part of our claim. So we're not going to sue them for damages, although we're still going to push on with the case to try and knock back this greenwashing that Bremworth is undergoing. So a bit of biff there. It's between natural and synthetic carpets. You wouldn't think that it would get this far, but Godfreyhurst, obviously, being part of a global organisation, will have the wherewithal to push on with their legal issues. I suppose it does hurt them if they are painted as being possible, should we say, less than environmentally friendly in the carpets that they put on our floors. So one to watch. The odd smile on the sideline, I have to say. We'll see. Bremworth obviously is happy to paint this as a David and Goliath sort of contest, saying, look, we're just a little company, we make it locally, we use local produce, stop picking on us. But they say, we're going to stand up for our principles here anyway, so we'll watch this one, lawyers at 20 paces.
And speaking of lawyers at 20 paces, class action against the ASB and ANZ banks have just expanded. What's this one over?
Well, this goes back several years now. ASB and ANZ, when people applied to them to vary terms of loans or mortgages or whatever, they were actually charging them fees that they weren't entitled to. And so it's the mid-teens, the mid-20 teens when this mostly happened. The companies or the banks were pinged by the Commerce Commission. They reached a settlement which was worth about $40-odd million. They recompensed the customers affected. Now, the customers, or should we say some customers, decided they wanted to push on further with this. And so they started a class action. Now, class action, for those who uninitiated, who aren't in the legal fraternity, basically somebody moves in, it funds the whole legal action, it takes it through the courts. If they win, they get a slice of the action, and what's left goes to the claimants. If they lose, they carry all the costs, and the consumers don't. Now, the banks are defending this cause, but the High Court has ruled that it's an opt-out claim. Now, that means that somewhere in the region of 150,000 customers who may have been affected by the actions of the two banks, who may have already been recompensed for any breaches and fees that were taken off them, they will have to say, we don't want to be part of this legal action. if they stay in, if they opt in, if they stay in the legal action, and there's a successful conclusion, then it could be that they're in for another payday. We'll wait and see on that one, but not an insignificant legal hurdles being cleared by the claimants in this particular aspect.
Roller skates on, Giles, markets and go.
Top 50 index for the share market, close to a 3-month high, up 33 points, about 1/3%. Just note a couple of big moves there. Infratil, the infrastructure investor, up 7%, big jump in the value of one asset there. And Pacific Edge, which makes cancer diagnostic tests, one of its areas in the US, may not be covered by Medicare. Big blow to them. Their share price down 38% today. On the currency front, New Zealand dollar just touching 63 US and 90.1 Australian.
Thank you, Giles. Giles Beckford joining us live from the Wellington studio. There's plans to entice more lapsed local nurses back to the health front line, with the government expanding its program to cover the cost of re-registering them. And will pay up to $5,000 towards their fees, with no cap on the number of nurses it will fund. As part of its plan to revive a fading health workforce, it's also doubling the number of nurse practitioners trained each year from 50 to 100. But that won't happen for a couple of years yet. And it's also doubling down on plans to bring in overseas nurses. New Zealand Nurses Organisation Kaiwhakahaere Kere Nuku joins us now. Hi, Kerry.
Hi there.
Do you think they've got the balance right here between growing the local workforce and bringing in overseas workers?
So I think what's happening is they're trying to bridge a gap almost overnight. There has to be a lot of investment in supporting New Zealand trained nurses. So I think I think there's a lot of incentives to bring over internationally qualified nurses, but there has to be a significant investment in allowing nurses to train for free within Aotearoa.
So, would it have been a better move, in your view, to say if you want to do a nursing qualification, you can go through the process and we will cover your fees?
That would have been a really sound way to approach this. This is about how do we attract students who are thinking of nursing and entering nursing as a profession. How do we retain them within the system, and how do we give them good jobs when they get out?
So a kind of subliminal campaign on Shortland Street's not really going to cut it then?
No, it's not going to cut it.
What do you think of that?
Affirmative. But I think it addresses it seems to be a little bit comical. What we want is really action, not to see how TV actors portray the role of nursing. Nurses are scientific, professional health professionals, and we want to be recognised as that. There is a lot of training that goes into nurses, and there is a lot of cost as a consequence of that. We want this profession to be taken seriously, and investing in a workforce that is fully qualified and professional is part of that. Shortland Street, it doesn't do it.
The expansion of the program to get local nurses to come back to the job, ones that are no longer registered, how much of an appetite is there for that? Because they've put that call out before.
That's right. I think times have changed. The cost of living, parents running, the working poor is real for many. So I think there is always an appetite for nurses to go back in. The issue is that they usually come back in on a part-time basis, maybe even weekends. So it's how do we make it attractive for them to be able to do that, as opposed to requiring them to work full-time. But they're only a small portion of, that's only going to service a small portion of the issue, of the bigger issue.
Doubling nurse practitioners, the training spots, they're going from 50 to 100, and these are nurses who have elevated skills and some prescribing rights, etc. Why can't that be done in a faster time frame?
The process of registration can often take some time, and ensuring that they have the requirements and meet the standards that we'd expect in Aotearoa. So there is often time delays in that. I think the principle behind that, though, is fundamentally correct. What we want to see is nurse practitioners working to the scope of their practice, and perhaps with the health reforms, it's creating opportunities for nurse practitioners to be more autonomous in their role and leading out on lots of the services. So,
In terms of Te Whatu Ora is going to have a one-stop immigration shop, right? It's going to be allowed, well, it's got pre-approval for 1,900 health workers and assistance to streamline the immigration process. 1,900 workers, you're what, 4,000 nurses short alone around the country?
Yeah, that's right. And we're buckling and we're seeing nurses leave every day. So there has to be some really quick fix. You know, the important thing is that immigration alone isn't the answer. We've got to look at how do we support and retain nurses that are currently working in here. How do we make the working conditions better? How do we acknowledge that pay and the right to be recognised professionally as a female?
But Kerry, will you be grateful for those international nurses? Will you be happy to have them coming?
We certainly will welcome nurses that are suitably qualified and competent and culturally competent to work within Aotearoa. Absolutely. We've relied on an internationally qualified nursing workforce, but what we have seen is it's growing over the years. If we take, for example, a Māori nursing workforce makes up only 7% of our workforce population. We've been that for the last 20 years. We've seen an increase in internationally qualified nurses in the last 15 years, from 15% up to 30%. We've got to look at incentivising and growing our own and retaining our own.
Thank you for your time this evening. That's Kerry Nuku, who's the New Zealand Nurses Organisation Kai Whakahaere there. It is 20 to 6. You're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. Homai o Whakaaro, the nurses organisation, saying the better move would have been to make it free to train as a nurse. Do you agree? And if not, why not? Let us know your reasons. Text us on 2101. You can tweet us at checkpointrnz and the email address checkpoint@rnz.co.nz. Let's head to the headlines now. Anei a iwi mena pita kōrero.
Tēnā koe, Lisa. Health Minister Andrew Little told Checkpoint he'd like to see nurses from overseas being recruited and in New Zealand hospitals in a matter of weeks instead of 4 to 6 months. The recruitment drive is part of a $14.5 million package to help boost health workforce numbers. And in an unusual twist, a youth-focused health recruitment campaign will be integrated into the storyline of Shortland Street, a first in its 30-year history. There's a call for Māori to take greater control of their own data through public investment in local cloud storage. Professor Tahu Kokotai says data decisions are being made by agencies without proper engagement. Australia's consumer watchdog is warning the country faces gas shortages and further price rises into next year and is suggesting the federal government get involved. The Coast Guard says the Kaikoura coast has become more difficult to navigate since the 2016 earthquake thrust up rock from the seafloor. A family of 4 had to rescue themselves on Saturday night after their 12-metre boat dragged its anchor and hit the rocks on the northern side of the peninsula. And a Greenland shark has been found among the coral reefs off the coast of Belize. The ocean giant usually makes its home in the icy Arctic waters around Greenland and Iceland, and it's the first time one has been officially spotted in the Western Caribbean. Those are the headlines. Looking at traffic, there is significant congestion on Auckland's roads around Sylvia Park, and that's causing significant delays to bus services. And also State Highway 94 between Hollyford Road Junction and the Tutuko Bridge is closed from now on. They'll assess that again tomorrow morning. I will have a full news bulletin for you and a short weather forecast at 6.
Ngā mihi, Evie. Another price hike for Waiheke Island commuters. From today, anyone on a Sea-Link vehicle ferry is now paying more for travel to and from Auckland after Fuller's, which runs the main passenger service, put its prices up last month. It comes amid ongoing negotiations to get the Fuller's ferries under an Auckland Transport Discount HOP card scheme. The Devonport ferry has already been integrated into AT's services, and commuters are hoping the same can be done for Waiheke, and soon. Finn Blackwell took a trip to the island.
Both Fuller's and Sea-Link offer 2 routes from the city to the island. Fuller's increased their fares from the 1st of July, meaning a return trip to Waiheke now costs $46 online instead of $42. Today, Sea-Link increased its fares by 8%. An adult monthly pass from Auckland to Waiheke, now $446.50, up from $413. A 10-trip vehicle pass is up to $920 from $851. For commuters on the Fuller's Ferry today, many of them are getting sick of the price hikes.
I think it's total bullshit. I think it's terrible.
As a broke student, $7.50 extra is kind of a lot of money. I'm not happy about it.
I don't know, it's pretty rough. But to be honest, work pays for it, so it's not too bad for me.
The feeling didn't change much on the ride over.
Because it's a destination. The fact that they think they can charge such high prices without giving any regard to people who actually live there and have to get to work and back. Scandalous.
A pop-up on the Sealink website says they've done their best to keep the increases to a minimum during a challenging year. It says operational costs have gone up in the past 2 years, and that sparked a review of prices for Waiheke, Aotea Great Barrier, and Rakino. Fuller's previously said that despite the business's best efforts to avoid passing the burden to customers, the increases were necessary. Auckland Councillor Chris Darby says there's a struggle on both sides.
I can understand the pressure on Fuller's, but we're also very cognizant that getting on and off the island needs to be affordable.
Chris Darby says they're working to bring Fuller's Waiheke service under an AT Hop monthly system for $345. He says the tech behind the AT Hop ticketing system is holding them up, but should be ready by October. Commuter Robin Tucker has a job in Auckland City and commutes regularly from Waiheke Island. She says the price increases simply are not good enough.
It's a bit of a slap in the face, really, when we think about, the fact that the government has announced half-price fares. That's just been continued, I think, to the end of January next year. And in the face of that, our ferry companies have put the prices up.
She says something needs to be done, and soon, to help commuters.
Well, I guess now the thing would be like a subsidy for those Waiheke Island, commuters, so that they can get to and from their business every day. It's currently costing me, around about $37 a day to go to work on the days I do go to work. That's a huge cost.
Residents on Waiheke Island agree.
And there are people here, there are families here that are basically trapped on the island because they can't access subsidised public transport.
Well, I don't know. It's pretty difficult for people that are travelling all the time, permanent residents travelling into Auckland. It's becomes very expensive.
Till then, it'll be rough waters ahead for those using the ferries. Sealink and Auckland Transport have been approached for comment.
It is 13 minutes to 6. Kia amo tonu mai. Stay with us. You're listening to Checkpoint on RNZ National. It's 35 years since Parliament passed a law making te reo Maori an official language. The Māori Language Commission is today celebrating the strides made since, but also warning that more needs to be done. Anei te kai reporter Ashley McCall.
From the stage
It's Māori land, not yours.
to the screen.
Kia ora I te wē ko Kayan Espanato ko ingoe haere aki nei tēnei hotaka
Nau mai hoki
coming
mai
up
ki
on
te pūrongo o te pautūtanga ko Māni Dunlop. Tēnei, in our usual...
To the airwaves. Te reo Māori is all around us, and today marks 35 years since the Te Reo Māori Act came into law, enshrining the native language of this land as an official one. It followed years of campaigning, the Māori language petition, the land marches, and Ngāta Matua movements, to name a few. At the time, the state of the reo was in peril. Haru Williams, on an RNZ panel about the language bill broadcast in 1986, said it was crucial for the country that it survive.
We should never underestimate the emotive power of the Māori language. The danger of loss is irretrievable, and like the plague, the danger is contagious. Should we lose the Māori language in this country, both Māori and Pākehā will be the losers, and both will be guilty of allowing it to die.
35 years later, the chief executive of Te Taura Whiri e Te Reo Maori, Ngā Hiwi Apanui, is celebrating where the reo is at, but also taking stock. Demand for courses is through the roof, and about 30% of people consider themselves proficient in Te Reo Maori, but that still classifies it as endangered. And Mr. Apanui says the goal of 1 million reo speakers by 2040 is still a long way off.
They need 3,000 teachers today to satisfy demand for kids going into Māori medium. And for English medium, they need 30,000 teachers. So that kind of gives you an idea of the problem or the issue that we face. The good thing is there's unprecedented demand for te reo, but the issue is what is the production line?
That's evident in the disparities faced by the very language nests that are meant to help the reo flourish. Kohanga and Kura Kaupapa were set up in the same wave that saw Parliament acknowledge Te Reo Maori. But since their inception, they've had to fight for funding, resources and acknowledgement. Tiru Nana Nui of Ngā Kura Kaupapa Chair Rawiri Wright says if they were better resourced, successive governments would be closer to their own reo goals.
There were more than 800 kohanga reo. There are now 480, thereabouts. And if Kura Kaupapa Māori had been properly and equitably resourced, we currently have 6,500 students in Kura Kaupapa Māori, but there should be closer to 10,000.
Mr. Wright says teaching the language runs deeper than just understanding what's being spoken.
It's not just about Te Reo Māori. It's about mātauranga Māori, tikanga Māori, Māori worldview, Māori faith, belief, essence, and just being Māori.
Ngā Hiwi Apanui says there are still inequities in access to the language, and mainstream schools are important to addressing that.
Not all Māori are in Māori medium, so to get te reo to those ones, and often it's socio-economically related. If you look through South Auckland, for instance, you won't find as many children coming out of families there speaking te reo Māori as you would if you look at the middle-class Māori sector of society in Wellington.
35 years on, Te Reo Maori is the strongest it's been in generations, a long way from when tamariki faced corporal punishment for speaking their native tongue, a language whose use was officially discouraged until the late 1960s. But there's clearly much still to be done.
Some of you getting in touch about the government's cost of living bonus. First payment made today, just over $110. A number of overseas Kiwis wanting to opt out of it. 970 opted out, says this person. Pity they couldn't donate to the Salvation Army food banks or other food banks. That would have helped more. A lot of you have the same thought. Another person saying, why not pay the money to a New Zealand charity of their choice? Very easy online using a credit card. Do keep feedback coming. Text us 2101 or tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ. Booze overboard sounds more like an accident than a strategy, but one Australian vineyard is using the ocean floor as a cellar, dropping its sparkling wine into the sea near Augusta in Western Australia. And after more than a year, the submerged drinkable treasure is gold, complete with coral incrustation. Sasha and Ben McDonald from Glenarty Road Vineyard were sampling a bit of their own product when they came up with the idea.
We were excited about the stories of those ancient shipwrecks that you hear about that have, sunk, and hundreds of years later they'd pulled up bottles of sparkling wine or champagne that's in perfect condition. So we thought, what an interesting story, and imagine if we could have a little play and see what the ocean could influence how it could influence our wine.
So what do you do with the wine? Explain the process to me. The ocean bit.
Yeah, sure. So basically, to start with, we're making a traditional method sparkling wine. So it's made from Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. The base wine has been bottled with a little bit more sugar and yeast to complete a secondary fermentation in the bottle, which gives it the bubbles. And then we actually sink the wine when it still has that bit of yeast in the bottles. So the bottles are laid down on their side and the ocean current gently rolls the bottle from side to side, just stirring up those lees or dead yeast that we have in the bottle. And that builds up this lovely texture into the wine and, makes it a really kind of unique point of difference for the wine itself.
So, Ben, it actually does change the flavour of the wine. It's not just, the romantic thought of putting it at the bottom of the ocean and changing the appearance of the bottle.
Yeah, it sort of adds that extra brioche sort of element to the wine. So instead of putting them in racks and turning them by hand all the time to try and achieve the same, letting Mother Nature.
I mean, we are in the Margaret River wine region, which is quite well known for Chardonnay. And when we're in the winery for the first couple of months after making the wine, we're hand stirring each barrel, so stirring up those leaves and building texture. So that's what we were trying to replicate with the wine underwater. Obviously, it's the first time we've played around with this, and we have laid down another couple of hundred bottles to really gauge how much influence the ocean can get. It's definitely still an experiment that we're able to look at from year to year and see what it really builds. But we believe there's definitely an influence from the ocean.
How deep do you put it?
It's 20 metres deep, so 10 fathoms as they call it on the Abalone Ranch. But 20 metres deep, which is enough to be able to have a great control of temperature. So it doesn't really spike, or which is really what wine needs to mature. And also in the area that it is, it's devoid of sunlight, so it really does have that, ideal cellaring conditions.
And have you had any casualties with the bottles? Do any of them break? And what are you capping it with?
So stainless steel screw caps, stainless steel crown seals on top of the bottle. And we had about 10% casualties from the soft corals and hard corals growing under the crown seal, popping the top off. So they get all covered in all sorts of marine growth. The crates fill up with sand, and there's sandworms and everything amongst them. So, yes, there was a lot of casualties from the crown seal getting compromised.
But not from people finding them or from the bottles breaking themselves. It was really just the caps. So, we tried to mitigate that this year by waxing on top of the stainless steel cap to see if that might help that growth. Focus its energy on the bottle instead of the cap.
So nobody's pinched your treasure?
No, not yet. Don't tell anyone though.
No, exactly. And when you bring the bottles up, they actually look quite amazing, don't they? Can you describe them?
Yeah, they've definitely been, I guess, almost... there's a whole new label that's gone on them from the ocean. They've been adorned by all these amazing sea creatures that have, especially worms, that have been able to create their amazing kind of patterns on the bottle.
And hard fan corals, and there was moray eels living in the crates. The crates were covered in, little baby abalone that had grown there naturally.
So every bottle is quite different.
There was a dozen different species of little crabs and fish, and it's its own ecosystem, each crate.
It gives me the heebies almost mentioning this, but it's shark territory, isn't it?
Very much so. That's why they're so safe where they are.
There's been quite a few times when Archer has been down there diving and there's been a great white spotted in the vicinity, and they send down the shark crate so everyone can be a little bit safe, or they just dive into their abalone, they call them habitats, these kind of concrete square like pyramids that the abalone grow in. They just hide in there until the shark's gone. But,
wow, you could consider it security, I suppose. Hey, have either of you been down to where the bottles are?
No. It's sort of they have their own dive team and that there. So for OH&S reasons, I'm guessing that's they have a dedicated team of divers that do that. We're on the boat, helping reef them out of the water and stack them up and that. So our son Archer and his friend Blake were putting big airbags on the crates, lifting them up to the surface so then we could winch them into the boat.
So tell me, does it have a special name, and what does this vintage cost compared to one that is, spends its time on land?
So the wine is called Fathoms, Fathoms Cuvée, really referring to that underwater element of the wine. We do our standard sparkling retails at Australian $45 a bottle, but this wine here actually retails $160 a bottle. The first round of wine that was dropped underwater has completely sold out within a couple of weeks, which was incredible, and we've had so much interest in it. But yes, the 2021 vintage, which is down underwater at the moment, will come up at a similar price point.
And that was Sasha and Ben McDonald, winemakers there. A lot of you getting in touch about the nursing shortage and the plan announced by the government today. Leslie from Whangarei says, I would agree with nursing training being free for a limited time, with a requirement that anyone benefiting from the scheme spend the next 5 years working in New Zealand hospitals. Another listener agrees as well, saying they'd be happy for free training, provided they were bonded to work in our public health system for 5 years, with perhaps 2 of that as a country or a regional service. And clearly there's an urgent need for more nurses, and this would help with that. But this listener goes on to say it would be nice if the Nurses Union did not use the current crisis to pursue their industrial action objectives. Another person says you can't keep extending the health system at the bottom of the cliff. We will go broke. Build a better fence. And this is a similar theme, is a common theme as well. Why not pay current New Zealand nurses a competitive salary to retain them in New Zealand? Sally says, imagine if nurses already living and working in New Zealand were paid more. Isn't that such an obvious initiative to retain existing staff ahead of spending millions on recruiting overseas nurses? Pay nurses and teachers a wage while they train, then bond them for the length of their training. Another listener says, it worked when I trained as a teacher. If one wants to opt out of fees, repaid. If the male-dominated trades can get free training, the same investment should be put into nursing and healthcare.
RNZ News at 6. Good evening, kia ora tātou, ko Iwi Ashton tēnei. A government package of sweeteners to help boost health workforce numbers has been unveiled. In an unusual twist, a recruitment campaign will be integrated into a Shortland Street storyline, a first for the show. Here's our political editor, Jane Patterson. I'm sorry, I don't seem to have that audio for some reason. We'll move on. Andrew Little told Checkpoint he'd like to see nurses recruited from overseas in New Zealand hospitals in a matter of weeks. In response to Mr Little's announcement, the nurses' organisation's kaiwhakahaere, Kerry Nuku, says a more significant investment would be allowing nurses to train for free in Aotearoa. She told Checkpoint that using Shortland Street to boost the profession isn't going to cut it. Ms Nuku says nurses don't want to see how TV actors portray them. They want their profession to be taken seriously. Inland Revenue says nearly 1,000 people have asked to opt out of the government's $350 cost of living payment. The first instalment of $116.67 goes out today to accounts listed with IRD. But some recipients are overseas and shouldn't be eligible. IRD won't say how many overseas are wrongly being paid, but 970 people have so far opted out. It can be done either online or over the phone. Cabinet has today agreed on a plan to close a loophole in the political donations system. A High Court ruling regarding the New Zealand First Foundation appears to have exposed a legal gap, allowing parties to use shadow entities to hide funding. Justice Minister Kitty Allen says that within the next 4 weeks, Cabinet will sign off on a draft amendment, which will then go before a select committee. That amendment will then be wrapped into legislation already being debated by Parliament. I seem to be having serious issues with my playback at the moment. Sorry about that. Kitty Allen says the loophole will be closed before the end of the year. The Prime Minister has arrived in Apia to commemorate 60 years since the signing of the Treaty of Friendship between New Zealand and Samoa. During a quick visit, she'll attend a number of traditional ceremonies as well as bilateral meetings. Our political reporter, Giles Dexter, was there, and let's see if I have him here.
As rescues continued in full force, volunteers from the United Cajun Navy on airboats coming all the way from Louisiana. Governor Andy Bashir says the official death toll reached at least 20.
I'm terribly sorry that's been played out for us, but it's the wrong audio. Let's go to the next story. There's a call for Māori to take greater control of their own data through public investment in local cloud storage. A new report from the Data Iwi Leaders Group says options like Māori-owned and hosted onshore data storage need looking into. Professor Tahu Kukutai says the government is currently refreshing its cloud-first policy, and that opens the way for change. Tahu Kokotai says data decisions are being made by agencies without proper engagement. Australia's consumer watchdog is warning the country faces gas shortages and further price rises into next year. It's suggesting the federal government get involved, as the ABC's Stephanie Boris reports.
Final of the women's 50 freestyle. Emma McKeon going for her 11th Commonwealth Games gold medal.
Standing behind the blocks ahead of a career-defining moment. 28-year-old Emma McKeon lining up to swim for gold.
Lanes 3, 4 and 5 for Australia. McKeon in 3.
McKeon started the race in front and finished strong.
I apologise profusely for the audio trouble we're having this evening. Let's move on to some more news. An investigation has found a registered mental health nurse breached professional and ethical obligations by sending inappropriate messages to a former patient on social media. According to a report by the Deputy Health and Disability Commissioner, the nurse sent suggestive Facebook messages to a young man in 2020, asking him, among other things, to send photographs of himself in his pyjamas and running gear. The nurse, who lost his job, said he was suffering from burnout at the time. The Deputy Commissioner has recommended he have further training and that the Nursing Council consider his fitness to practice. Private property owners may have to look at upgrading their sewage pipes to prevent future wastewater overflows in Marlborough. Blenheim's sewerage system hit capacity yesterday when the Marlborough District Council opted to pump excess wastewater into flooded rivers to help the system cope. The council's Three Waters engineer, Stephen Rooney, says high groundwater levels are contributing to the problem.
Sewer networks that are generally above the waterline when the groundwater comes up are submerged, and that submergence is often within private property, so private residents with damaged or older infrastructure.
Stephen Rooney says more investment is needed from the council and private property owners alike. To sport, and Lewis Clareburt says it's special to join Dame Sophie Pascoe as the only New Zealand swimmers to win 2 gold medals at a single Commonwealth Games. Clareburt surprised himself by winning this morning's 200-metre butterfly final after taking gold in yesterday's 400-metre individual medley. He and Pascoe, New Zealand's most decorated para-athlete who won her 5th Commonwealth Games gold medal on the weekend, are now in a special club.
I guess it's pretty cool, just to be alongside Dame Sophie. She's such an awesome person, and I think I'm, super lucky that, she's been there along my journey and she's been supportive of me, and it's just crazy.
Meanwhile, New Zealand weightlifter Megan Signal is poised to make her long-awaited Commonwealth Games debut. Signal was selected for the Tokyo Olympic Games and Gold Coast Commonwealth Games, but was unable to compete at both events due to injury.
And we're around all the other countries and got to see the competition venue and the warm-up area, and that that definitely raises the bar when it comes to the amount of excitement you're feeling for Comp Day.
Megan Signal is competing in the women's 71-kilogram event. Former Boston Celtics basketball star Bill Russell, the anchor of a team that won 11 NBA championships and the NBA's first black coach, has died, aged 88. And American golfer Tony Finau has become the first player in 3 years to win back-to-back PGA Tour events with victory in the latest tournament in Detroit. That's the news.
Tonight on Nights, poets David Eggleton and Darren Kamali look forward to their Mad Doggerel Cabaret, a comic yet lyrical portrait of Aotearoa, New Zealand and its place in the South Pacific. Helene Elliott brings us sport from her place in the United States, while Raymond Sangapolatele assesses the cost of living from his vantage point in Clendon, Manurewa, on Nights of me, Brian Crump, after the news at 7 on RNZ National.
Well, that was a little pick and mix of news miscellanea. Hope you got some information out of that. Here's the short forecast from Met Service to midnight Tuesday. For Northland, Auckland and Waikato, mainly fine, but isolated showers, especially in the west. For Coromandel, Bay of Plenty, Gisborne, Hawke's Bay and Waidadapa, fine, but there's high cloud increasing tomorrow. Northwest gales in Waidadapa tomorrow. From Waitomo to Wellington, including the central high country, fine today. A few showers developing tomorrow. Northwest gales in Wellington tomorrow. Nelson, Marlborough and Canterbury, fine today. High clouds increasing tomorrow and there's scattered rain developing about the Western Ranges and Canterbury Plains. Northwest gales tomorrow. Bulla and Westland, showers turning to heavy rain in Westland tomorrow morning and Bulla in the evening. In Otago and Southland, fine with increasing high cloud today, scattered rain tomorrow, possibly thundery in the west from the afternoon, northwest gales tomorrow. For Fiordland, periods of rain with heavy falls and thunderstorms from tonight, northwest gales tomorrow. And for Te Kohu, the Chatham Islands, a few showers. It's 9 minutes past 6. You're with Lisa Owen next on Checkpoint. I'll have news headlines for you at 6:30.
Wow, that was a cliffhanger of a bulletin. Go have a cup of tea, Evie. Buckle up, people. You're with Checkpoint. Ko Lisa Owen tēnei. Rescuers are hopeful they'll find more survivors after catastrophic flooding in Kentucky, but the death toll has continued to climb to at least 28. And a mayor in the flood zone says that number could be just the tip of the iceberg. Mike Valerio reports.
As rescues continued in full force, volunteers from the United Cajun Navy on airboats coming all the way from Louisiana. Governor Andy Beshear says the official death toll reached at least 26 early Sunday, but mayors add their counts are even higher.
It's over 30-some total for just our three counties, and I think that's just the tip of the iceberg, truthfully.
Stunning stories of survival continue to emerge. A 98-year-old simply hoping for help. Her bed nearly submerged. Video from across the street shows her rescue, men holding onto her in nearly head-high water.
I can see her face.
Those who escaped the floods are grateful for what they have.
Kids just lost their lives. There's 6 of them that died, and I have a 9-year-old boy. And if I would have lost him, that'd been over.
I'm sorry. He made it. That's all that matters.
Yeah, he made it.
Motels, hotels, and schools serving as shelters are full.
It's actually really amazing to see how people are willing to give and willing to help their community.
Governor Beshear and local authorities are trying to open Buckhorn State Park. It could serve as a refuge, they say, when a heat wave arrives Tuesday into Wednesday.
Australian swimmer Emma McKeon has made history in Birmingham. McKeon is now the most successful Commonwealth Games athlete in history after winning her 11th gold medal in the pool. The ABC's Alexandra Humphreys reports.
Final of the women's 50 freestyle. Emma McKeon going for her 11th Commonwealth Games gold medal.
Standing behind the blocks, ahead of a career-defining moment. 28-year-old Emma McKeon lining up to swim for gold.
Lanes 3, 4 and 5 for Australia. McKeon in 3.
McKeon started the race in front and finished strong.
It's still Emma McKeon in front. Can she get there? Does she hold on? She's got her 11th. The Queen of the Commonwealth.
McKeon won the women's 50 free in 23.99 seconds. The Australians swept the pool. Teammate Meg Harris secured silver, while Shayna Jack locked in the bronze. McKeon's parents, Ron and Susie, both former international swimmers, watched on from the stands as their daughter achieved an incredible milestone. She's now surpassed fellow Aussies Ian Thorpe, Susie O'Neill and Liesl Jones for most career golds at the Commonwealth Games. Ron says Emma was feeling the pressure in the lead up to the race.
She just expressed the fact that she had the nerves, and for her to actually own up to that was quite something. So, she probably hasn't described it like that since probably her first big international event, probably 2013 type thing.
It was McKeon's third gold in Birmingham, following success in the 4x100 metre freestyle and 4x100 metre mixed relays. She's also a 5-time Olympic gold medalist, and moments after her victory, she told Channel 7 she was enjoying the ride.
I feel like I'm here a lot more relaxed this year than last year, a lot happier, and I think, I haven't done as much work as I had the
this time last year, but I think the place that I'm in mentally is kind of showing in my performances.
Long-time coach Michael Bowl says it's been a whirlwind first 3 days of competition for McKeon, who's just trying to represent her country as best she can.
She's a great competitor. I think, she's one of those athletes that, the bigger the stage, the better she is. So she really likes competing. I think one of the most important qualities that she's got, she's very humble. She's not one of these swimmers or athletes that, likes a lot of notoriety. She's very humble and, very, very well grounded. And I think that's really attributed to her parents.
McKeon's run in Birmingham isn't over yet. She has another 4 races in her program.
There have been nationwide celebrations in England after the hosts won the European Women's Football Championship, beating Germany 2-1 at Wembley Stadium this morning. Women's football has grown in popularity in recent years, especially in England, where there is already a successful professional league and grassroots participation is on the rise. It's the first major trophy for any senior England team since 1966. The BBC's Dan Rowan was at Wembley watching history being made.
This day, this summer, this team will go down in football folklore, their names written in history.
It was the moment English football had dreamed of for years, in front of a record crowd and amid an atmosphere the like of which the women's game in this country has never experienced. The hosts secured a nail-biting and defining victory in this, the game of these players' lives. The first half was goalless, 8 times European champions Germany missing the tournament's joint record goal scorer Alexandra Popp, a late withdrawal after aggravating an injury in the warm-up. But the deadlock was then broken when Keira Walsh released substitute Ella Toone, whose exquisite chip just minutes after coming on gave the host the lead they craved. Germany responded impressively and were unlucky not to equalise. And with just 10 minutes remaining, England's defence was finally breached. Lena Magel poking Tabia Wasmuth's low cross into the roof of the net to make it 1-1. Amid almost unbearable tension, the game went into extra time. But with the dreaded penalty shootout looming, England won a corner. And after a goalmouth scramble, substitute Chloe Kelly pounced to send Wembley wild.
It's in! Chloe Kelly!
There was no time for a desperate Germany to respond, and England sealed a historic first major tournament triumph. Captain Leah Williamson explaining just how much it meant.
I just can't stop crying. With something like this, we talk and we talk and we talk and we finally done it. It's about doing it on the pitch, and I tell you what, the kids are all right.
Having led the Netherlands to glory in the last European Championships 5 years ago, England coach Serena Wiegman's remarkable record in the tournament has continued.
We did it. It's so incredible. I'm so proud of the girls, but also of everyone else in the staff, the support of the FA. We have done just amazing job.
56 years ago, when England's men won the country's only other major footballing tournament, the World Cup in 1966, women were still banned by the FA. The long journey towards acceptance and respect is now complete, and the hope is that this victory turbocharges the women's game.
In breaking news, there is a situation unfolding at the Hawke's Bay prison. In a statement, the Corrections Lower North Island Regional Commissioner, Liz Hawthorne, says at approximately 2:30 this afternoon, 6 prisoners accessed the roof of the youth unit at Hawke's Bay Regional Prison. Staff responded immediately to contain the incident and are currently talking to the prisoners. All other prisoners in the youth unit have been safely secured, they say. The area is within the secure perimeter of the prison's unit. There is no threat to the wider security of the prison and no threat to public safety. So about half a dozen prisoners on the roof of the youth unit at Hawke's Bay Prison, and that situation is still unfolding. It is 17 minutes past 6 and you're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. Stability in the Pacific, climate change and expanding America's relationship with New Zealand are all issues on the agenda for a top US commander visiting New Zealand. Admiral John Aquilino, the head of the US Indo-Pacific Command, has previously spoken out about China's increased activity in the Pacific. Now he's here enhancing US-New Zealand relations in a string of meetings with our Defence Force boss. Rosie Gordon and camera operator Sam Rillstone report.
New Zealand's Defence Force performing a haka and rolling out its band. Even the sun shining on Wellington's Pukeahu National War Memorial Park did its bit to warmly welcome Admiral John Aquilino onto New Zealand soil. It's his first visit to Aotearoa in his role as commander of the US Indo-Pacific Command. The trip part of an ongoing US effort to show its relationship with countries in the Pacific is important.
Well, certainly all of the partners in the region, New Zealand and the United States especially, work every day to ensure the peace and stability that we enjoy continues.
That stability a key concern amid China's increased presence in the Pacific. China's push to secure security deals with Pacific nations earlier this year sparked alarm both here and in Australia. Admiral Aquilino laid a wreath this morning, paying respect to soldiers who have fallen before a series of meetings with the head of our Defence Force, Air Marshal Kevin Short.
The meetings today are really just to continue our discussions on ensuring we understand each other's positions and to identify new areas where we can work together and continue to expand our partnership.
Kevin Short was looking forward to those discussions.
We've got a long history of working together in the Pacific and a great working relationship. Admiral Aquilino arrived on Saturday, and to me it indicates the strength of our relationship both at government level and with our two militaries.
The pair have recently been in Sydney, where they met with 27 military leaders to discuss what more can be done to ensure any disputes in the Pacific are resolved peacefully. Admiral Aquilino's not worried about the size of New Zealand's Defence Force.
So the one thing you will never hear out of me is big or small. This is a partnership, and all nations deliver those things that they can deliver.
The US isn't the only country talking up peace in the Pacific today. Speaking at the China Business Summit in Auckland this morning, China's ambassador to New Zealand, Wang Xiaolong, had this message.
China and New Zealand both hold major stakes in preserving peace and stability in the Asia-Pacific as our common home. Tensions, let alone conflicts or wars, are the last thing China wants to see in this region.
US officials have also identified climate change as the largest existential threat facing the Pacific region. They say the challenges we face today will be different to those faced 80 years ago. Admiral Aquilino says climate change is an important issue that will have national security implications. An increase in unregulated, illegal and unreported fishing in the Pacific is also getting US military attention.
We also discussed the importance of the ability to fish in exclusive economic zones, and we discussed the importance of maritime domain awareness.
Admiral Aquilino will be in New Zealand for the next few days as the US cozies up to its Kiwi partner.
And the video version of that story from Rosie and Sam will be on our web page. A World War II veteran says sheer luck has made him a centenarian. Ken Orman served in the Royal New Zealand Air Force during World War II and still has the piece of shrapnel that could have killed him during battle. Our reporter Lauren Crimp and cameraman Angus Drever popped in to wish Mr Orman a happy 100th birthday.
Well, I was a Flight Lieutenant, Kenneth Gerald Orman. DFC and Bar.
And we'll start. Oh, sorry. That's okay.
Yet another well-wisher on the end of the phone. They've been pouring into Ken Orman's Lower Hutt home. Neighbours, friends and family with cake and gifts. And some distinguished greetings via the post too.
Yeah, the Queen's there, the Governor-General, Prime Minister, Minister of Defence.
Rewind 80 years, and just before another milestone birthday, Mr Orman was getting ready to serve in the Royal New Zealand Air Force, despite not yet knowing how to drive a car. He left Wellington on April Fool's Day, 1942.
Trained in Canada, had my 21st birthday, and 2 days later I graduated as a pilot officer.
Mr Orman says his first operation in the Bomber Command was a rude awakening.
I have to say that when I'd finished it, I thought afterwards, if I've got to do another 29 trips like this, I'm not going to last it.
But between then and his final mission in April 1945, Mr Orman completed 38 operations, flying Lancasters with No. 186 Squadron. He still has the piece of shrapnel that struck him below his right eye during an operation that saw 2 of his fellow pilots go down.
I was dazed for a moment, blood going everywhere, and I looked at my hand on the throttles and wiggled my fingers. Oh, I'm all right.
Despite his injury, Mr. Orman continued fighting. The act later earned him the Distinguished Flying Cross, awarded for gallantry in action, and a bar for his leadership in the sky. Or, as he puts it,
"You've done something which impressed your masters."
Mr. Orman arrived home a few days before Christmas 1945. He was one of 6,000 young Kiwis to serve in the RAF Bomber Command, but one of just 2,000 who returned. Lindsay Mowat from the New Zealand Bomber Command Association says Mr. Orman's job was one of the most dangerous and had the highest casualty rate of any services in the war.
When the crew took off at night, they had no certainty that their fellow aircrew from other aircraft on the squadron would return.
It makes a 100th birthday celebration all the more momentous.
We have only around a dozen veterans remaining here in New Zealand who served in Bomber Command, and Ken is actually the 5th who has turned 100. So it's a very special day.
Mr. Orman's son, Peter, is incredibly proud of his dad.
He's an amazing guy. Best dad you could ever have. It's super special. Being an old cricketer, I told him he had to make his ton. So I think he's seen it. He was an opening batsman, so I think he's seen it as a duty to do it.
Time for Mr. Orman to raise his bat to commemorate a remarkable knock. After a cup of tea and a well-earned slice of cake.
Happy birthday, Ken. Congratulations on reaching the ton, and thank you for your service. Nichelle Nichols, who played Lieutenant Uhura in the Star Trek TV series and films, has died at the age of 89. Nichols was a trailblazer both on and off the screen. Jason Carroll looks back at her life.
Security sweeps of all decks are negative, Mr. Spock.
Before Nichelle Nichols broke barriers on board the USS Enterprise as Lieutenant Uhura, she was dancing and singing her way across the stages of New York City and Chicago, the city close to where she grew up, Robbins, Illinois. In 1967, she released a cover of the Joe McCoy classic, Why Don't You Do Right, on Epic Records.
Get out of here, Daddy. Get me some money, too.
But it was playing Star Trek's Lieutenant Uhura where she really found fame. It was a groundbreaking role for an African-American woman in 1966, widely considered one of the first times a woman of color was not portraying a servant on TV. Uhura was the chief communications officer and 4th in command on board the Enterprise.
I didn't find out that it was 4th in command till the 2nd season. Nobody told me. But it was something you look forward to doing every morning.
Nichols actually thought about leaving after the first season. The show's creator, Gene Roddenberry, begged her to stay. But it was an influential fan that finally convinced her, Martin Luther King.
He said, you can't. Oh. Don't you know who you are? To our movement, to everyone you are there in the 23rd century. You've created a role that has such dignity and everything. It's powerful. You cannot leave. He told me many other things, like this is one of the only shows that Coretta and I allow our little children to stay up and watch.
That's terrific.
So I went back and on Monday morning told Gene, and he said, God bless Dr. Martin Luther King. Somebody sees what I'm trying to achieve.
Another landmark for the show during the turbulent 60s, the first scripted interracial kiss on national television in 1968.
We had heard rumors that the southern stations, some southern stations might cut it down.
It changed television forever, and it also changed the way people looked at one another. If two of their favorite actors can battle through it and come through it on top, why can't everybody?
The show ended in 1969, but endured for years in syndication and at conventions attended by devoted Trekkies.
This is just simply millions of people in every walk of life, of every age, who subscribe to the adage of peace in our galaxy. It's really as simple as that. And at times it gives hope. And we are who we are.
In 1994, Nichols published her autobiography, Beyond Uhura, Star Trek, and Other Memories. Nichols making headlines again in 1997, this after her brother Thomas was one of those who took his life in the Heaven's Gate mass suicides. He had been a member of the cult which believed a spaceship trailed the Hale-Bopp comet. The only way to reach it was through death.
He did not believe he was in danger. I do not believe he was in danger. I believe that he is now with my mother and father.
Nichols also starred in several Trek movies and even worked with NASA to increase diversity in the space program.
This was especially meaningful to me and my work with NASA over the years, supporting their efforts to increase diversity in the space program. I had the privilege of recruiting the first women and minority astronauts for the Space Shuttle program.
Nichols' enduring beauty, her strength of character, her commitment to human rights will always inspire.
I would hope that that young women would look to me and say, when I grow up, I would like to be like her. I would hope that what I do with my life would inspire that kind of respect.
Love Lieutenant Uhura. And that's all we have got time for this evening. Now, the late news team's going to keep you updated throughout the night. Ko te kaupapa tuatahi a pōpō, and tomorrow from 5 a.m, First Up goes to Shortland Street to find out what role the producers and the actors will play in the government's recruitment drive. This is to get more nurses in, and part of the plan announced today by Andrew Little. Do tune in 5 a.m. tomorrow, and we will be back with you same time tomorrow. Kia pai tōpō, have a great evening.
RNZ News headlines at 6:30. Kia ora tātou, koiwi Ashton tēnei. A recruitment campaign will be integrated into a Shortland Street storyline as part of a government package to help boost health workforce numbers. But the nurses organisation says offering to train New Zealand nurses for free would be a much better fix. Inland Revenue says nearly 1,000 people have asked to opt out of the government's $350 cost of living payment. And Cabinet has today agreed on a plan to close a loophole in the political donation system, allowing parties to use shadow entities to hide funds.